Music is everywhere. From the latest hits your local radio station plays on your way to work or to school, to the songs that are played at life's greatest moments, like Pomp and Circumstance at graduation and Papa's Candid at a wedding. Music can provoke laughter, tears, and an insatiable urge to dance. It is a medium that affects every single life on this earth. But why? Why are we as human beings drawn to it, and why does it play such a big part in our world? We have always had music, but why is it such a mystery? My journey to discover this mystery began 11 years ago when I was 6 years old and in the kindergarten. One day after school, I was sitting on a bench, waiting for my mom to come pick me up, when I heard a sound coming from one of the classrooms. So I walked over to the classroom, looked through its window, and saw a row of 5 students, each holding a violin on their left shoulder and a bow in their right hand. They were making a sound that I, at 6 years old, had never heard before. I was instantly mesmerized by the sound, and more so by the instrument that produced it. Don't get me wrong, they were probably playing a very squeaky rendition of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. But to kindergarten Elaine, those squeaks made music, and that music was magic. From that moment, I was determined to learn how to play the violin. 5 years later, I'm in the 4th grade, and still a relative beginner. One day, I'm in the car, driving to my violin lesson, listening to the classical music radio station when Vivaldi's Four Seasons comes on. The melody and intensity of the piece drew me in, and I was overcome with the same determination I had 5 years ago. But this time, it was to learn and play Vivaldi's Four Seasons. When I get to my violin lesson and tell my teacher this, she looks at me reluctantly and says, "Are you sure this piece is very difficult to play and you're not quite there yet, maybe in an ear?" But I was stubborn and persistent. Eventually, she handed me Summer from Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and this is what I saw. I was obviously overwhelmed, but in the next 9 months, I worked with the notes, the dynamics, the fingerings, and the bowings. After those 9 months, I had learned to play every single note and marking on the page. But I was still struggling. The piece did not sound like it did in my head. Something was missing, and I could not figure out what I had failed to practice. I was playing all the right notes, but there was a disconnect between the music I wanted to hear and the music my violin was producing. I struggled with one section in particular. When I played this section for my teacher, it sounded a little like this. When I was done, she said to me, "Elaine, you're playing with no emotion. You may be playing the right notes, but you have to look beyond the page." She told me to think of a shepherd, weeping for one of his lost sheep, and to imagine that these melodies were his cries. So I picked up my violin and played the passage again. The notes on the page had finally become the music I had heard in my head for the past 9 months. Emotion transformed my interpretation of the piece as not only the listener, but also as the musician. With this revelation, I went on to discover the backstories behind other sections of the piece. Now listen to the chirping of the cuckoo birds at the beginning of the piece. I began to realize that the meaning behind music may be beyond the page. Fast forward to fall of last year. I'm now playing the viola, the larger, lower, and alto cousin of the violin, and about to begin my second year in the Maryland Youth Philharmonic. At the first orchestra rehearsal of the year, walk over to my section and see in my chair the sheet music for the pieces we were playing for our first concert. One of the pieces was Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony. So I sit down, unpack, and start flipping through the pages, trying to get a sense of the music and trying to frantically cite the notes. As I look through Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony, I am immediately overwhelmed by the number of notes, sharps, flats, and fast tempo markings there are. We then start rehearsing the piece, and I notice that everyone, like me, is trying to play all the right notes. But we all go home, learn the notes, and return 1 week later ready to rehearse. So we start rehearsing the symphony, and in the middle of one of the movements, my conductor cuts us off and says to us the same thing my violin teacher had said to me in the 4th grade, that we were playing with no emotion or intensity. He then went on to tell us the story behind the composer and the symphony. Dmitri Shostakovich was born in St. Petersburg in the early 20th century. In 1928, when Joseph Stalin initiated his 5-year plan, Soviet culture, music in particular, was closely regulated. Music had to be composed in a Soviet style. Shostakovich's music was attacked, and he was forced to withdraw his 4th symphony. However, his 5th symphony was his response to Stalin. On the surface, the symphony sounds joyous, optimistic, and reflective of the Soviet style. But Shostakovich refused to allow the Soviet Union to restrict his right to express himself through music. Hidden beneath measures of militaristic notes are beautiful melodies that reflect fear, pain, and depression. If you listen closely, there are these 8th notes that are passed from section to section throughout the piece. These notes are the knocks of Soviet soldiers at Shostakovich's door at night. They were taken away like they had done with his neighbors. He could not confide his fear in anyone around him, so he confided in his music. Immersing myself in his narrative changed my perception of the piece. It is no longer a mass of technically complicated passages, but instead an expression of pure emotion. After that, every time I played the symphony with my orchestra, I could hear the knocking of Soviet soldiers at my door and feel the same pain and fear that Shostakovich had felt. 11 years after embarking on this musical journey, I had finally discovered the mystery behind music. Music is not just an accumulation of markings on a page. Notes and dynamics alone mean nothing. Music is a medium that carries the truth and pure emotion of the person who wrote it and the person who performs it. When you listen to music, you're learning and connecting to an individual story and the essence of who they are as a human being. When you play music, you are not only learning and connecting, but also feeling. Feeling a piece's emotion and making sure that whoever is listening to you is connecting to that emotion. When you watch a musician perform, you will notice that they are constantly moving. To an outsider, this may look odd. My friends and family in particular like to point out how I excessively move my upper body and how they have never seen a set of nostrils flare so many times. But movement is a way a musician immerses him or herself in music's pure emotion. And it's how they connect with the composer. This is the most important connection, because all connections depend on the musician. If the musician fails to connect with the composer, the musician cannot connect with the listener, and the listener cannot connect with the composer. When I performed the symphony with my orchestra, our job was not to play pretty music. It was to tell the audience a story and to make sure our playing reflected the fear and pain he had written into the piece. Music is a form of intimate human connection between the composer and the musician and the listener and the composer. It is the great conductor that transcends generations. It connects us to humans past, present, and future. But my musical journey is not and was never solely about music. My journey to discover music's mystery through the violin and viola has played an integral part in shaping me into the person I have become. Despite the highs and lows of being a learning and growing musician, without this journey, I would not have the drive, passion, and motivation that have helped me accomplish the things I'm most proud of today. I attribute most of my journey and all that has come from it to the quality music education I was fortunate enough to receive from educators who were passionate about what they did. But many children across the nation are not given the opportunity to embark on their own journeys to discover the mystery of music. Federal funding for the arts and humanities is at approximately $250 million, 4 times less than the amount the National Science Foundation receives. I am not belittling science, but music programs are continually cut from schools and school districts across the nation. This is despite the overwhelming amount of scientific evidence that show a correlation between music and improvements in math, reading comprehension, creativity, and social development. Music and music education has lost its importance in our society. People no longer recognize the power of connection through music. To quote the great conductor and composer Leonard Bernstein, "Life without music is meaningless. Music without life is academic." We depend on music to communicate emotion, but music also depends on us to use it to write our stories. It is time that we acknowledge music as a form of intimate human connection, and its ability to not only connect us with others, but also help us grow as human beings. Thank you.